It started with a stranger carrying my suitcase, and almost ended with him climbing into my bed while I slept. I travel alone a lot. Most of my friends are either too broke, too busy, or too scared to hop on random flights every other month, so I'm used to exploring cities by myself. I thought I knew how to stay careful. I thought I could read people. That confidence almost got me killed in San Diego. I had finally decided to check San Diego off my bucket list after visiting nearly every major city in California. The hotel I booked looked decent online, nothing fancy, but close to downtown and surrounded by nightlife. At first, everything felt perfect. Warm air, palm trees, the buzz of traffic outside. The kind of city that tricks you into letting your guard down. The moment I walked into the lobby, I noticed him. A man maybe 10 years older than me stood near the entrance like he had nowhere to be. The second our eyes met, he smiled too quickly and started talking to me like we were already friends. "First time here?" His voice was calm, friendly, almost rehearsed. He asked where I was from, how long I'd stay, whether I was traveling alone. Looking back now, those questions feel less like small talk and more like an interrogation. He claimed this was his second visit to San Diego and said he was staying in the hotel too. Then he pointed at my luggage and offered to help carry my bags upstairs since he was heading that way anyway. I should have said no. But travelers trust strangers all the time. Airports, hotels, Ubers, bars. You get used to temporary human kindness. So I smiled and accepted. Inside the elevator, I noticed something strange. He never pressed a floor button. At the time, I barely thought about it. We reached the second floor, and he followed me silently down the hallway, rolling my suitcase behind him. When we stopped outside my room, he slowly looked at the number on the door before setting my bags down. That look lasted maybe 2 seconds. Too long. "Enjoy your stay," he said with a grin that suddenly didn't feel friendly anymore. I thanked him, unlocked the room, and watched him walk away down the hall until he disappeared around the corner. The entire interaction should have ended there. It didn't. About an hour later, after a short nap, I headed back downstairs to explore the city. Just as I was about to leave, the woman at the front desk called me over. Her expression looked tense. "That man who went upstairs with you," she said quietly. "Do you know him?" I laughed nervously and told her no, he had just helped me with my bags. The color drained from her face. She explained that she had seen him lingering outside the hotel long before I arrived. According to her, he came inside only seconds after I checked in. She was almost certain he wasn't a guest. Then she leaned closer and lowered her voice. "If you see him again, stay away from him." Suddenly the lobby didn't feel safe anymore. Still, I tried convincing myself she was overreacting. Maybe he really was just being nice. Maybe we'd both watched too many true crime documentaries. So I ignored the feeling in my stomach and went out anyway. The city was amazing during the day. I walked through downtown, explored waterfront streets, ate tacos near the marina, and almost forgot about the strange man entirely. Almost. That evening, I returned to the hotel to shower and change before dinner. A different employee was working the front desk now. I went upstairs, turned on the TV for background noise, and laid down for a quick power nap after my shower. That's when the knocking started. 3 slow knocks. Then a man's voice. "Housekeeping." Every hair on my arms stood up. It was my first day there. I hadn't requested housekeeping. And something about the voice sounded wrong, too low, too hesitant, like someone pretending. I walked quietly toward the peephole. No one was there. The hallway outside was empty. A cold wave rushed through my chest. Immediately, I thought about the man from earlier. I stepped away from the door without making a sound while the knocking came again, harder this time. "Housekeeping." I grabbed my phone and called the front desk. My voice shook as I asked if they had sent anyone to my room. "No," the employee replied instantly. My stomach dropped. I asked them to send someone upstairs immediately. About 5 minutes later, an actual hotel maid knocked on my door and identified herself properly. I explained everything, trying not to sound paranoid, but even she looked disturbed after hearing it. I left for dinner soon after, trying desperately to shake the fear. But fear has a way of following you. Later that night, after a city lights tour and a few crowded bars, I returned to the hotel around 10 p.m. Before going upstairs, I told the front desk worker everything, the stranger, the fake housekeeping knock, all of it. Trying to reassure me, she checked the live hallway cameras. "No one's up there," she said. I wanted to believe her. Upstairs, I locked my door, changed clothes, and collapsed into bed with the TV humming softly in the background. Eventually exhaustion pulled me into that strange half-asleep state where dreams and reality blur together. Then I heard a sound. A door clicking shut. Inside my room. At first, my sleepy brain mixed it into the TV noise. But then I felt the mattress dip beside me. Someone was on the bed. My eyes snapped open. A man wearing a black mask and baseball cap was climbing toward me through the darkness. For one horrifying second, neither of us moved. Then he lunged. His hand slammed over my mouth while the other grabbed my throat, trying to pin me down into the mattress. I could smell sweat and cigarettes through the fabric of his mask. I thrashed wildly, clawing at his arms, kicking blindly beneath the blankets. He whispered something into my ear. "Stop fighting." That's when pure survival instinct took over. I bit his hand as hard as I could and screamed. Not a normal scream, the kind that tears your throat apart. The attacker panicked and tried covering my mouth again, but I kept fighting, screaming, scratching, doing anything to stay alive. Then suddenly, bang, bang, bang. Someone started pounding on my hotel door. The attacker froze. "Help!" I screamed with everything left in me. For a split second, I saw pure rage in his eyes through the holes of the mask. Then he bolted. He ripped the door open so violently that the woman outside stumbled backward onto the floor as he shoved past her and sprinted toward the stairwell. The woman crawled inside my room, horrified, while I sat shaking uncontrollably on the bed, crying so hard I could barely breathe. Soon the hallway filled with guests, hotel staff, and police officers. And then came the detail that still terrifies me years later. The police discovered the man had entered my room using a master key. Not forced entry. Not a broken lock. A master key. Meaning this wasn't random. He had planned it. And I knew exactly when the plan started, the moment he carried my suitcase upstairs and memorized my room number with that cold smile on his face. The mask hid his identity, so police could never officially confirm it was him. But deep down, I know it was. The hotel refunded every dollar I spent there, moved me into another room, apologized over and over, and promised they were taking the matter seriously. But none of that changed the fact that a masked man had climbed into my bed while I was sleeping. Looking back now, I honestly think I should have sued the hotel. The idea that someone could somehow obtain a master key and enter a guest's room in the middle of the night still feels insane to me. The police collected the surveillance footage, interviewed everyone involved, and told me they would investigate thoroughly. But years passed. No arrest. No suspect. No phone call asking me to identify anyone. Which probably means the man who attacked me was never caught. And that thought still follows me everywhere. But as horrifying as that experience was, it strangely wasn't the only time traveling put me dangerously close to pure evil. The next story happened years earlier, around 2013 or 2014. Honestly, parts of it are blurry now, like my brain tried to bury the memory somewhere deep and lock it away forever. At the time, I was a freshman studying in New York City. Christmas break was approaching, and for the first time in months, I was finally heading home to Bulgaria to surprise my family. For those who don't know, Bulgaria is a small Eastern European country near Romania and Greece. People often joke about how unsafe parts of Eastern Europe can be, but ironically, the most terrifying moment of my life didn't happen there. It started at JFK Airport. The place looked like absolute chaos. Crowds flooded every terminal. Crying babies, delayed flights, exhausted travelers sleeping on luggage. It felt less like an airport and more like a collapsing evacuation zone during wartime. After hours of dragging suitcases through security lines and waiting endlessly at the gate, I finally boarded my flight to Istanbul, where I'd later connect to Bulgaria. 8 hours in economy. The kind of flight where every muscle in your body slowly gives up. I was seated between two men. And instantly, I felt trapped. For context, I'm barely over 5 feet tall and weighed maybe 110 pounds back then. Both men sitting beside me were massive compared to me, broad shoulders, heavy arms, the kind of men who could overpower me effortlessly if they wanted to. The man on my right stayed quiet most of the flight. Black hair, glasses, muscular build. Intimidating, but harmless. The man on my left was different. From the second I sat down, something about him felt wrong. He kept muttering under his breath like he was talking to someone invisible. Sometimes he scratched at his skin aggressively until it turned red. Other times he leaned his arm against mine and just left it there. At first, I told myself not to overreact. Airports are full of strange people. But then I caught him staring at me. Not casually. Not accidentally. He was studying me. Every time I looked up from my laptop or phone, his eyes were already locked onto me. Unblinking. Empty. Like he was memorizing my face. I tried distracting myself with music and TV shows. At one point, I started watching season 2 of American Horror Story Asylum. Big mistake. About halfway through the episode, the man suddenly spoke. Why do people enjoy shows that make mentally ill people look like monsters? His voice was calm, but there was something cold underneath it. I awkwardly laughed and asked if he needed something, hoping the conversation would end there. It didn't. He kept staring at the screen before slowly turning toward me. I think it's messed up, he said quietly, how everyone assumes people who skin others alive are insane. Then he smiled. Aren't we all capable of that? My blood ran cold. I remember my stomach twisting so hard I thought I might throw up right there on the plane. I laughed nervously just to avoid escalating the situation, but inside, panic alarms were screaming in my head. Who says something like that to a stranger? For the rest of the flight, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I could feel him looking at me. I considered asking a flight attendant for another seat, but the plane was packed. So I stayed frozen beside him for 8 miserable hours over the Atlantic. Eventually we landed in Istanbul. I grabbed my bags so fast I nearly left my passport behind and rushed off the plane without looking back. I remember feeling overwhelming relief stepping into the airport crowd, thinking I'd never see that man again. I was wrong. Christmas passed normally. I spent time with family, exchanged gifts, laughed with friends. But his words never left my head. People who skin others alive. By January, I packed my things to return to New York. While cleaning out my tote bag before my flight, I found something folded deep inside one of the pockets. A note. At first I thought it was trash. Then I opened it. And instantly felt sick. Written in shaky handwriting were the words. I wonder what you look like under your skin. I stopped breathing. My hands literally started shaking. That note had been placed in my bag while I slept on the plane. Meaning the man had watched me long enough, and gotten close enough, to touch my belongings without waking me. I should have gone to the police. I should have kept the note. But I panicked and threw it away. Then about a month later, in February, my younger sister sent me a news article from Istanbul. The moment I saw the mugshot, my heart nearly stopped. It was him. The same man from the plane. According to the article, he had been arrested for multiple violent crimes including rape, attempted kidnapping, attempted murder, and first-degree homicide. I remember sitting frozen in my dorm room staring at the screen while my entire body went numb. Because suddenly, every strange thing he said on that flight no longer sounded like dark humor. It sounded like a confession. For years after that, I stopped traveling during the holidays altogether. Airports, long flights, crowded terminals, all of it made me anxious. And even now, whenever a stranger sits too close to me on a plane, I still think about him. The resort looked like paradise online. Cheap 7-day all-inclusive package. Unlimited drinks. 3 giant pools glowing blue at night. Beachfront access. Endless buffet. Loud music echoing from beach bars until sunrise. It honestly felt too good to be true. Turns out, it probably was. In the winter of 2018, my girlfriend Claire and I escaped the freezing weather back home and booked a vacation in Mexico. We wanted one relaxing week away from work, stress, and reality. Just sunshine, ocean air, and alcohol. The resort itself was beautiful in a manufactured kind of way, tourists laughing by the pools, bartenders juggling bottles, music blasting from speakers hidden in palm trees. Everywhere you looked, people were drunk, sunburned, and happy. But beyond the resort walls was something entirely different. Miles of jungle, endless dirt roads, and places locals quietly warned us not to explore. For the first 2 days, we stayed inside the resort drinking frozen cocktails and pretending life was perfect. But eventually cabin fever kicked in. We wanted adventure. Something more authentic than resort food and staged dance shows. That decision almost got us killed. On the 3rd day, we took a private shuttle north to a small car rental place a few miles from the resort. The drive itself already felt unsettling. Long stretches of isolated road cut through dense jungle with almost no signs of civilization besides occasional roadside villages. The shuttle driver glanced at us through the mirror several times during the ride. Before dropping us off, he gave us a warning. "Stay near the coast," he said. "Do not drive too deep inland." His tone didn't sound casual. It sounded serious. Of course, like idiots, we ignored him. The rental place was tiny, definitely not the kind of place carrying luxury cars. No flashy Mustangs or Jeeps. Just small beaten-up economy cars lined beneath the sun. We rented a dusty little Ford Fiesta and started driving south along the coastal highway. At first, everything was beautiful. The roads curved alongside bright green jungle. Small towns appeared and disappeared between stretches of wilderness. Claire played music while I drove with the windows down, feeling like we were inside a travel documentary. Eventually we reached Tulum. And honestly, it wasn't what we expected. People online made it sound magical, but most of it just felt overcrowded, commercialized, and strangely tense. After driving around for a bit, we decided to head back north toward the resort. That should have been the end of it. But then we spotted a wide dirt road disappearing into the jungle. No signs. No buildings. Just wilderness. Claire laughed and said it looked like something out of a horror movie. I laughed too. Then I turned the car onto the road. At first it was actually fun. The dirt path cut deep through massive walls of jungle on both sides. Birds screeched somewhere overhead while the tires bounced over rocks and potholes. It felt isolated in an exciting way. But after a few minutes, Claire admitted she was uncomfortable. "This probably isn't smart," she said. "What if we damage the rental?" Honestly, she was right. So I stopped the car and did a 3-point turn to head back toward the main road. That's when they appeared. 3 men stepped out of the jungle like ghosts. No warning. No sound. Just suddenly there. The second we saw them, Claire and I both muttered the exact same thing. "Oh no." The men spread out slowly across the road, blocking our path. I rolled my window down only slightly while one approached speaking rapid Spanish. His expression looked aggressive immediately. I tried explaining. "No hablo español." The atmosphere changed instantly. One man moved toward Claire's side and started knocking hard on the window while another came closer to me repeating one word over and over. "Money. Money." Then the third man reached into his pocket and pulled out a knife. Everything after that happened in seconds. I slammed my foot onto the gas pedal so hard the tires spun in the dirt before catching traction. The car lunged forward violently, forcing the men to jump out of the way. I heard screaming behind us as they chased after the car for a few seconds, but obviously they couldn't outrun it. Neither Claire nor I spoke for almost a full minute afterward. Our hearts were pounding so hard it physically hurt. I didn't slow down until we reached the highway again. Back at the resort parking lot, we sat silently inside the car trying to process what had just happened. We should have returned the car immediately. We should have stayed inside the resort after that. Instead, we made another terrible decision. The next morning, several resort workers recommended we visit a nearby cenote hidden in the jungle. They described it as peaceful, secluded, and beautiful, crystal-clear water inside a cave system untouched by tourists. Exactly the kind of hidden gem travelers dream about. So against our better judgment, we drove out again. The directions led us down another isolated dirt road very close to the resort. Eventually we found a weathered wooden sign pointing toward the cenote parking area. Oddly enough, there were no other vehicles there. Not one. At the time, we thought we'd gotten lucky. Now I realize that should have been a warning. We followed a narrow jungle path surrounded by thick vegetation and towering trees. The deeper we walked, the quieter everything became. No birds. No insects. Just silence. And then, footsteps. Rustling in the jungle around us. At first I thought it was animals, but the sounds matched our pace too perfectly. Every time we stopped walking, the noises stopped too. Claire grabbed my arm tightly. Someone's out there. I tried staying calm and told her to keep moving. That's when a man suddenly stepped out onto the trail directly in front of us. He started speaking Spanish immediately. Again, I explained I didn't understand. Broken English followed. He gestured for us to come with him, insisting he knew the way to the cenote. At first, it almost seemed believable. But after a few minutes of following him, Claire whispered something that made my blood freeze. "We're not following the signs anymore." She was right. The marked trail was gone. The man kept leading us deeper into the jungle. Then Claire subtly pointed toward his back pocket. A large knife handle stuck out beneath his shirt. The exact moment I saw it, survival instinct kicked in. I leaned toward Claire and whispered one word. "Run." I shoved her forward and we sprinted. Behind us, the man immediately started yelling and chasing after us through the jungle. Branches cracked behind us while we ran blindly back toward the parking area. Thankfully, he was slower than us. We burst out of the trail gasping for air and jumped into the car. For one brief second, I thought we'd escaped. Then 3 more men emerged from the jungle. Suddenly they were surrounding the vehicle, yanking on the door handles, slamming their fists against the windows, screaming in Spanish. One grabbed something heavy and smashed it against Claire's window hard enough to crack the glass slightly. Claire started crying hysterically. Honestly, I almost did too. I threw the car into reverse, nearly hit a tree, then slammed into drive and sped away while the men pounded on the sides of the vehicle. Dust exploded behind us as we tore back down the dirt road. 2 days. 2 separate encounters. Both involving armed men in isolated jungle roads. At that point we were done. Absolutely done. We returned the rental car immediately afterward. Miraculously, the car only had dirt stains and minor scratches despite being attacked. The employees didn't even ask questions. Back at the resort, we warned the staff about what happened deep in the jungle. Oddly, none of them looked surprised. That was the worst part. One worker simply nodded and said quietly, "You should not go there alone." We reported everything to the resort staff before we left: the men on the jungle road, the attempted robbery, the group surrounding our car near the cenote, all of it. At first, the employees acted concerned. But the more we explained, the more I realized something deeply unsettling. None of them looked shocked. No one reacted like this was unbelievable. No one even asked many questions. One older worker simply sighed and shook his head like he'd heard stories like ours before. Then he quietly told us they would warn future guests not to wander too far from the resort. That sentence stuck with me, because it sounded less like a precaution, and more like routine damage control. The remaining days of the trip felt completely different after that. The paradise atmosphere was gone. Every smiling bartender, every dark path between buildings, every jungle road beyond the resort walls suddenly felt dangerous. At night, I'd stand on the hotel balcony listening to distant noises coming from the jungle beyond the highway and wonder how many tourists disappeared out there every year without making headlines. Claire barely slept after the second attack. Honestly, neither did I. Every time someone walked past our room at night, I'd wake up instantly. Every unfamiliar voice near the pool made us tense up. We stopped drinking heavily because neither of us wanted to lose awareness of our surroundings anymore. The vacation had transformed into survival mode. When the final day finally arrived, I remember feeling more relief than sadness packing our bags. Usually after vacations you don't want to leave. This time, we couldn't wait to get on the plane home. Even during the shuttle ride back to the airport, I caught myself constantly checking behind us through the rear window like someone might still be following us from the jungle roads. Maybe that sounds paranoid. But after nearly being ambushed 2 days in a row, paranoia starts feeling a lot like instinct. The craziest part is that both attacks happened in areas considered safe for tourists, near expensive resorts filled with Americans and Europeans just trying to relax on beaches and drink margaritas under palm trees. That realization terrified me more than anything. Because if danger could get that close to crowded tourist zones, what was happening deeper inland? To this day, Claire refuses to talk about that trip for very long. The moment Mexico gets mentioned, her entire expression changes. And honestly, I don't know if we'll ever go back. Not because the country itself is evil. Not because every person there is dangerous. But because sometimes all it takes is being in the wrong place for 30 seconds to become the next missing tourist story people watch on YouTube late at night.